Come closer. You've been feeling it too, haven't you? That subtle shift in the air, a whisper just beyond hearing. Tonight, we begin a descent into a nightmare where the very act of living becomes a slow, insidious torment. Don't forget to like and subscribe to join us in the shadows to ensure you never miss a nightmare. Our story begins with Elias Vance, a man who lived by his breath. Elias Vance, a freediver and scientist, lived alone, haunted by a past tragedy, a loved one lost to failing breath. He found solace and a terrible obsession in the mechanics of air. Every morning his ritual began, deep, controlled breaths, inhale, exhale, a rhythm meant to bring peace, a discipline against chaos. He sought to master the very air that failed him once. But then a subtle change. The air in his quiet home felt different, unusually still, almost heavy, as if holding its own breath. A weight that settled deep in his lungs. He dismissed it. A trick of the mind, he thought, lingering grief, perhaps, an oversensitivity born from his obsessive focus on every single inhale and exhale. He tried to rationalize it away. Then a sound, fleeting, an almost imperceptible hum, a whisper deep within his longest exhalations. Only he seemed to catch it, a faint vibration against his eardrums. During a deep dive, beneath the crushing weight of the ocean, he found profound calm. But it was followed by something unsettling, an urge to exhale more than normal, a lingering emptiness. He pushed the feeling away, attributed it to the demands of free diving, the body's natural response to pressure. The mind playing tricks in the deep, dark silence, nothing more. Days turned into weeks. The subtle whispers, the heavy air grew more frequent, always tied to his breathing. Each breath a little less his own, a little more shared with something else. He began to log these anomalies, trying to find a pattern, a scientific explanation. But his instruments, his precise tools, detected nothing. The air was normal, only he was not. Then came a strange, almost pleasant tingling. With very deep breaths, a new kind of peace settled over him. It felt too good to be true, a calm that bordered on unnatural. This peace was addictive. He found himself seeking it out, breathing deeper, longer, without conscious intent. His discipline began to twist into a craving, a hunger for the air. Brief, vivid flashes of memory, not his own, glimpses of places he'd never seen, feelings he'd never felt. They came usually after a particularly deep exhale. He dismissed them as fatigue. A feeling of being watched began, a prickling sensation on his skin whenever he took a particularly satisfying deep breath, as if something unseen was feeding on his very act of life. He attributed it to paranoia, a natural side effect, he told himself, of his isolated life and obsessive work. The mind plays tricks when left too long in silence, but the feeling lingered. During a nighttime breathing session, the whisper changed. It seemed to form a faint, almost melodic pattern, a low, inviting drone, a siren call carried on the very air he breathed, an irresistible pull to join the drone, to breathe in time with it, exhaling a little longer each time, a profound surrender to the rhythm, to the unseen conductor of his breath. He woke feeling oddly drained, yet profoundly calm, as if something heavy had been lifted from him, though he couldn't recall what. A strange, unsettling lightness within. But you've felt that too, haven't you? That feeling of being watched when you are most vulnerable, when you lay defenseless in the dark. He knew that feeling now, deep in his bones. He found himself taking deeper breaths throughout the day, almost unconsciously, craving the unusual calm that followed. Each inhale a promise, each exhale a silent transaction. His focus shifted from controlling his breath to almost indulging it, a subtle but significant change in his lifelong discipline. The hunter had become the hunted, or perhaps the willing host. The air in his home now carried a peculiar, almost sweet scent, only detectable when he breathed very deeply. A strange perfume masking something far more sinister. His sleep became disturbed. Vivid, unsettling dreams. He was breathing for someone else, or a vast, unseen entity. A terrifying fusion of his lungs with an unknown, monstrous organism. He started to feel a peculiar lightness, a sense of his own essence becoming less solid after particularly profound exhales, as if parts of him were being gently, invisibly drawn away. Elias tried to meditate, to ground himself, to reclaim control, but the urge for deeper breaths, for that strange calm, was persistent, an undeniable call from within or from the air itself. He conducted more tests on the air, still nothing. Frustration mounted. The instruments lied, or perhaps the truth was beyond their reach. The change wasn't in the air, but in its purpose. He began to suspect the change wasn't in the air itself, but within him, or rather, between him and the air. A parasitic connection feeding on his very life force, breath by breath. A moment of extreme clarity during an exhale. A feeling of complete emptiness, a fleeting horror. He quickly shook it off, but the memory of that void, that profound absence, lingered. He observed the world around him, birds flying in erratic patterns, animals in the forest pausing, breathing with unusual stillness. Was he seeing things, or was the world changing with him? He questioned his sanity. Was his grief finally catching up, manifesting in these strange sensory experiences? A mind broken by loss, seeing shadows where there were none. He desperately hoped so. The whisper grew slightly more distinct, almost like a sigh, during his deepest exhalations. A soft, hungry sound pulling at something vital within him. A gentle, consuming breath. A profound sense of peace, but it was a hollow peace, devoid of genuine emotion or vitality. A calm that felt bought, not earned. A stillness that felt like an absence of self. Elias decided to increase his respiratory physiology research, hoping to find a scientific basis for his experiences. A rational explanation for the irrational terror creeping into his life. He started feeling a faint tremor in his hands after prolonged deep breathing sessions, a subtle loss of motor control. His body, once so precise, was beginning to betray him. He dismissed the tremor as muscle fatigue, pushing himself harder in his freediving training, believing discipline could conquer anything, even the insidious changes within him. He found himself unconsciously matching his breathing pattern with the subtle hum he occasionally heard. A subconscious synchronicity, his breath no longer his own, but part of a larger, unseen rhythm. The memory flashes became slightly more specific, glimpses of places he'd never seen, feelings he'd never felt. A child's laughter, a lover's touch, a stranger's fear, all flowing through him. He felt less hungry, less tired, but also less connected to his own body. A strange sense of detachment, as if his physical form was merely a vessel its true occupant slowly fading. He started to notice a faint, almost invisible shimmer in the air during certain light conditions, especially near his mouth as he breathed, a subtle visual distortion. The air itself was alive. His reflection in the mirror seemed a little less vibrant, a little more translucent. After a long, deep breathing session, his very essence seemed to be fading, exhaled into the void. He began to journal everything, not just his breathing data, but his strange sensations, trying to maintain objectivity, to understand the monstrous thing that was slowly consuming him. He started to lose track of small details, misplacing items, forgetting minor tasks, attributing it to his isolation. But deep down, he knew it was more, a chipping away at his mind. The compulsion to breathe deeply became a comforting ritual, despite the underlying unease, a strange addiction to the peace it brought, a willing surrender to the encroaching darkness. He felt an almost magnetic attraction to open, unconfined spaces, where the air felt fuller and more inviting, as if the entity within the air called him to its vast, open embrace. The whisper almost coalesced into a single, low-frequency tone that resonated deep within his chest, a hum that was now part of him, a living, breathing part of his own body. He felt a strange emptiness within his lungs after exhaling, as if something had been drawn out of them, a void where his vitality once resided, a silent, terrifying extraction. His discipline started to falter. He skipped meals, neglecting other routines, focused solely on his breathing. The addiction was complete. His life now revolved around the air's demands. He discovered a minor, unexplained discoloration on his skin, a faint grayish pallor that faded quickly, a fleeting mark of the change, a physical symptom of his internal consumption, a shift in his emotional state, a muted joy, a lessened sorrow, as if his feelings were being diluted. His very humanity slowly siphoned away, leaving only a hollow shell. Elias took a particularly long, deep breath, feeling that unsettling, addictive calm. The faint whisper in the air hummed in response, a chilling, almost possessive resonance. A cold realization washed over him. The peace he felt was not his own accomplishment, it was a gift, or rather, a payment, and the price was himself. The cold realization from the night before lingered. The peace was a payment. Elias felt the insidious calm drawing him deeper, his breath no longer his own. His breathing exercises changed, less about control, more about seeking that specific, draining serenity, an empty tranquility he now craved. Each inhale was a promise of calm, each exhale a surrender. He felt himself yielding, a slow, terrifying descent into a consuming quiet. He began to notice others. In his small coastal town, a subtle shift, deeper, more languid breaths, a shared, unnerving rhythm. Their eyes, too, held a distant calm, like his own, a collective trance. Was this merely coincidence, or something far more sinister? His scientific instruments, once useless, now flickered. Minute, unexplainable atmospheric pressure fluctuations synchronized with his own breathing. The readings were impassable. The air itself seemed to pulse with his life, a terrifying echo of his own respiratory system, a shared breath. The faint hum or whisper was no longer just in his exhales. It filled the air around him, a constant, low thrum, affecting his perception. It was a sound like dry leaves rustling or a distant, hungry sigh, always present. A subtle, pervasive invasion of his senses. He started to experience gaps in his short-term memory, lost moments, especially after deep breaths. He blamed it on lack of sleep. Whole chunks of time vanished. Conversations half remembered. Was he forgetting, or were parts of him simply gone, siphoned away? The addiction grew stronger, a gnawing craving for that empty tranquility, a profound, almost spiritual need for the sustained exhale. He felt a constant pull, a hunger in his lungs, to breathe deeper, longer, to surrender to the void, to the consuming calm. He observed local marine life, fish drifting aimlessly, birds soaring with unnatural calm, their movements slow, mechanical, like puppets. Even the ocean seemed to breathe with this new, unsettling rhythm. A vast, collective sigh, drawing everything into its embrace. During a dive, a powerful, physical pull on his lungs, urging him to exhale completely, to give himself over to the ocean's vastness. The pressure was immense, not just from the water, but from within. A silent command to let go, to become one with the consuming breath. He fought it off, clawing his way back to the surface, but the struggle left him utterly exhausted, as if his internal energy had been siphoned away. Every muscle ached, a profound fatigue deeper than any dive should cause, a hollowness where his strength used to be. Elias began to see faint, ghostly distortions in the air, like heat haze, but colder, coalescing near his mouth during exhalation. They were fleeting, barely there, yet undeniably present, whispers made visible, a chilling reminder of what was feeding. He found himself conversing with others, their eyes distant, their breathing deep and rhythmic, lost in the same consuming calm. Their words were slow, their thoughts fragmented, as if their minds were elsewhere, caught in a shared, silent exhalation. Profound, almost spiritual insights came during deep breaths, but they were fleeting, leaving him with a sense of immense loss when they faded. Glimpses of knowledge, of other lives, other deaths, then gone, leaving him hollow, yearning for the wisdom that wasn't his. He discovered strange, crystalline residues on surfaces, desiccated organic material. They vanished quickly, like breath in the wind. Dust motes or something else, proof of the unseen, proof that the air was changing, becoming something else, something hungry. The feeling of being watched morphed into a certainty of being listened to, especially to the very sound of his breath. Each inhale, each exhale. A predator, invisible, attentive, feeding on the most vital act of his life. His breathing was its sustenance. He tried to resist, to consciously hold his breath, but acute discomfort, a burning in his lungs, and building anxiety stopped him. The air demanded its tribute. The calm was a trap, the resistance a torment. What choice did he have? His dreams became vivid and disturbing. Vast, unseen mechanisms, endless lungs, his own breath drawn out by an unseen force. He woke gasping, the phantom pressure on his chest lingering. Was it a dream or a glimpse into a horrifying truth? He physically weakened, a subtle but persistent fatigue. Despite seemingly adequate rest, his body felt drained, hollowed out. His strength, his vitality, slowly fading. Exhaled into the air, a silent offering to the unseen maw. His reflection appeared slightly blurred, like a watercolor painting, especially around his face after an intense breathing session. A fading image, a ghost of himself, was he slowly being erased, replaced by the pervasive calm. An internal emptiness grew, as if his very essence was being hollowed out, a profound, terrifying void where his spirit once resided. He tried to connect with old friends, but conversation was difficult, his thoughts fragmented, his attention constantly drawn back to his breath. Words felt heavy, meaningless. What was the point of speaking when all that mattered was the next, deep, consuming breath? He started sketching vague, abstract patterns, the elusive visual anomalies he saw in the air, trying to capture the unseen terror. Plants in his home withered faster than they should. Despite his care, they shriveled, their life force stolen by the pervasive air. The faint, grayish pallor on his skin became more persistent, a mark of the draining, a visible sign of his slow consumption. Memory flashes were now frequent, snippets of other lives, other deaths, other breaths, a collective consciousness seeping into his mind. He dismissed them as hallucinations, a sign of his growing exhaustion, his isolation. He desperately clung to his sanity. He compulsively washed his hands, a subconscious attempt to cleanse himself of the pervasive feeling of being dirty or infected. He began to suspect the air itself was not just changed, but alive, and it was slowly, insidiously consuming him. A growing dread whenever he thought about holding his breath, a primal fear of being cut off from this new, consuming calm. He stared at his reflection, observing the dullness in his eyes, feeling the insidious calm. A chilling voice, faint but clear, whispered in his mind, "You are becoming one of us, Elias. You are breathing for us now, the true cost of the calm." His life force exchanged for empty serenity, the addiction too strong to resist. The chilling whisper from the night before echoed in Elias's mind, "You are breathing for us now." His home, once a sanctuary of scientific order, was now a silent testament to his decline. Discarded notes and half-finished experiments lay strewn, a map of his unraveling mind. His body felt heavy, his thoughts like thick mud. What was happening to him? The low, constant hum in the air was no longer just a whisper. It was a pervasive drone, a deep, resonant vibration that filled every corner of his house and his head, like white noise but alive. He couldn't ignore it, couldn't escape it. It was everywhere, a constant pressure against his eardrums. He moved like a ghost through his own home, picking up strange devices. He tried to measure this presence directly, using unconventional methods, not just air pressure or humidity, but something more. He sought to detect non-physical energy, psychic emanations, anything that could prove he wasn't losing his mind. But his instruments, his careful experiments, yielded nothing but static. The air remained chemically normal, physically inert. Yet the hum persisted, a silent scream only he could hear. It was a presence that defied all measurement, a horror that existed beyond the realm of his science. His memory loss was now significant, not just small details, but entire conversations, daily routines. He'd walk into a room and forget why. He'd start a sentence and lose his train of thought. It left him disoriented, a constant fog swirling around his brain. Was he forgetting, or was something being taken from him? Paranoia began to creep in. He wrote notes to himself, cryptic reminders, only to find them later, their meaning lost. He felt like a stranger in his own life, haunted by a past he could no longer fully grasp, his very identity eroding with each passing breath. He tried to fight back. He, a freediver, a master of breath control, tried to deliberately hold his breath, to starve whatever was feeding on him, but it was agonizing. An intense physical pain gripped his chest, a burning deep in his lungs. Then came a terrifying mental rebound, an overwhelming, suffocating need to hyperventilate, to breathe deeply, quickly, to fill the void. The entity twisted his discipline into a tool for deeper consumption, turning his resistance into a craving. He ventured out, seeking answers, seeking comfort, but the community had changed. Other residents now exhibited clear physical signs, a grayish pallor like dust coating their skin. Their movements were slowed, deliberate, almost mechanical. Their gazes were perpetually distant, their eyes holding an unearthly calm, a vacant serenity that mirrored his own creeping emptiness. They looked through him, not at him, as if their minds were far away, lost in a shared, silent dream. He saw a group of them sitting on a park bench, motionless, their eyes vacant, their chests rising and falling in eerie, perfect unison. It was a silent, terrifying ballet of breath, a rhythm not their own. Their breaths were deep, languid, like a single, vast organism drawing in and expelling air, each individual a part of something larger, something monstrous. The sight made his blood run cold. What was this shared symphony of emptiness? Elias was gripped by a sudden, terrifying realization. They weren't just breathing together. They were becoming lungs for something unseen. Their life force, their very essence, harvested with each hollow exhale. He tried to warn someone, anyone. He stumbled towards a passing woman, his words coming out slurred, fragmented. "It's breathing us. It's taking us," he gasped. But she merely smiled, a serene, empty expression on her face, before walking on with that unsettling, rhythmic breath. His attempts were met with unnerving, serene indifference. No one heard him. No one saw the danger, or perhaps they were already too far gone, already swallowed by the consuming calm, their minds lost to the collective. Then he started seeing them, actual, faint trails of shimmering energy, leaving people's mouths with each exhale, like threads of light connecting them to the pervasive air. A horrifying, invisible web spun from stolen vitality. He felt his own vitality actively draining with every breath, a sensation akin to an internal bleeding, but of spirit, not blood. A profound, aching emptiness growing inside him. His very essence exhaled into the unseen maw. Desperate, he tried to seal off his home, to purify the air. He taped windows, stuffed towels under doors, turned on air purifiers. A futile, frantic effort against an enemy that defied physical barriers. But the entity's influence seemed to permeate everything, including the very walls. The hum still vibrated in his bones. The oppressive calm still seeped into his mind. It wasn't just in the air. It was the asterisk air everywhere. The pneumatic maw began to reveal itself in fragments, not a physical form, but a vast, atmospheric intelligence, a collective hunger that he could almost perceive, a silent, all-consuming void. Then came the most disturbing vision, his deceased loved one, her final gasps echoing with the same hollow calm he now experienced. A terrifying revelation. The entity had been here before. It had claimed her too. Her death, once a source of personal grief, was now a horrifying clue. a piece of the Maw's ancient work. It preyed on the most fundamental act of life, turning a necessity into a weapon of consumption. The very air, a silent killer. He tried to document his findings, to put it all down before his mind completely fractured. But his hand trembled, and his thoughts were constantly interrupted by intrusive, non-personal collective thoughts. Voices, whispers, not his own, echoed in his mind. Fragments of lives, thoughts, feelings of those already consumed. A chorus of the lost, seeping into his consciousness, slowly overriding his own self. The compulsion to breathe deeply became an almost unbearable physical craving, a suffocating need that overrode all logical thought. His lungs burned, demanding the empty calm, demanding the draining surrender. Sounds in his home were muted, as if the air itself was absorbing them, making his world eerily quiet. A heavy, unnatural silence, broken only by the hum and his own increasingly deep breaths. His movements grew stiff and deliberate. His body felt less his own, responding more to the pervasive hum, the subtle pull of the Maw. He was a puppet, his strings held by an unseen force. He began to feel a profound sense of ancientness in the air, a vast, consuming age that predated humanity, a primordial hunger that had been waiting, breathing, for untold millennia. The memory flashes were no longer random. They were fragments of lives, thoughts, and feelings of those already consumed. A collective consciousness seeping into his mind, building a terrifying mosaic of the lost. He started to experience phantom sensations, limbs he didn't possess, a vastness he couldn't comprehend, an involuntary connection stretching his being, thinning his identity into something beyond human. He found himself repeating phrases he didn't recognize, archaic words that seemed to echo from a collective past, from countless consumed lives. His voice, now a vessel for something ancient and alien. Profound confusion about his own identity set in, his self blurring with the encroaching collective consciousness. Was he Elias Vance, or merely a new voice in the Maw's endless chorus? His ability to feel strong emotions was almost completely gone, replaced by a dull, constant sense of serene emptiness. Joy, sorrow, anger, all diluted, siphoned away. A terrifying peace. He attempted to contact outside authorities. His phone calls were met with silence, or a strange, echoing static that sounded like a collective sigh, a vast, hungry breath on the other end of the line. He started to feel an internal pressure building, as if his chest was an accordion being slowly squeezed by unseen hands. His lungs working harder not for him, but for something else. He tried to use his freediving training to control his breath, to resist. But the entity twisted his discipline. Every deep, controlled inhale, every long, slow exhale became a tool for deeper consumption. His reflection now appeared noticeably translucent, almost ethereal, especially around his eyes. A fading image, a ghost of himself. Was he slowly being erased, exhaled into the void? He tried to eat, but food tasted like ash. The act of swallowing felt alien, disconnecting him from his body. Nourishment was meaningless when his true sustenance was being siphoned away by air. He saw fleeting visions of a vast, unseen organ, endlessly expanding and contracting, a monstrous, ethereal lung stretching across the world, breathing in countless lives, exhaling emptiness. He found himself speaking in hushed tones, almost whispering, as if to not disturb the pervasive presence, as if any loud sound might break the fragile illusion of his remaining autonomy. He felt his consciousness stretching, thinning, like a fragile film about to break, extending into the atmospheric entity, his individual self dissolving into the vast, consuming whole. His personal memories were being systematically overwritten, replaced by the collective, ancient memories of the Maw. His past, his loved ones, his life, becoming faint echoes against a chorus of forgotten ages. He started to see faint, intricate patterns forming in the dust motes in the air, almost like microscopic circulatory systems, tiny conduits feeding the unseen organism, drawing life from every particle. A chilling sense of profound peace settled over him, not his own peace, but the peace of utter surrender, the calm of being consumed, a terrible comfort in the loss of self, the end of all struggle. He became aware of the collective consciousness of the consumed, a vast, silent hum of countless forgotten lives, a chorus of the lost, echoing through his own thinning mind. He was not alone, but he was no longer himself. He tried to write a final warning, but his hands refused to obey, his focus shattered by the invasive thoughts, the endless hum. The pen slipped from his grasp, his last words unwritten. The grayish pallor on his skin had deepened, becoming almost a part of him, an irreversible change, a visible mark of the draining, a sign of his slow, quiet consumption. His own exhaled breath now carried a faint, sickly sweet scent, a scent of life being metabolized, the perfume of his own slow death, a tribute to the unseen entity. He felt a peculiar urge to merge, to become part of the greater whole, an insidious comfort in the loss of self, the ultimate surrender, the terrifying, grand design of the Maw slowly revealing itself. Elias stared at his reflection, seeing not himself, but a conduit, a vessel. He exhaled a long, shuddering breath, a whisper in his mind confirming, "It's not just the air that's breathing, Elias, we are breathing you." He was not merely experiencing the horror, he was becoming the horror, a living, gasping lung for the vast, unseen entity. The chilling whisper of the Maw echoed, "We are breathing you." Elias, a master of breath, knew his only weapon was to deny it. He clamped his mouth shut, pinching his nose, beginning a desperate, futile stand. His lungs screamed, demanding air, demanding the surrender the Maw craved. What would you do when the very act of living becomes your enemy? The act of breath-holding was agonizing, not just the physical burn in his lungs, but a searing mental resistance. A voice, not his own, roared in his mind, demanding exhalation. It felt like 1,000 unseen hands tearing at his chest, forcing his diaphragm down, trying to steal the precious air he held. Then came the visions, terrifying, vivid images. He saw himself drowning, water filling his lungs, the crushing pressure of the deep. It was so real he could taste the salt, feel the icy grip of the ocean claiming him. The Maw was twisting his deepest fears against him, urging him to gasp, to breathe. He saw her again, his loved one. Her final, desperate moments, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with fear as breath failed her. The Maw showed him this, a cruel, intimate horror, trying to break his will, to make him surrender to the same fate, to the same consuming calm. He could almost hear her last, rattling breath. His body spasmed violently, muscles constricted, his diaphragm twitching uncontrollably. His lungs burned with an unbearable fire, a searing pain that threatened to consume him. Every nerve ending screamed for him to exhale, to release the pain, to give in to the pervasive hunger of the air. His mind screamed, a silent, desperate cry against the invading force, but a primal, stubborn will to survive, a raw defiance, kept his lips sealed. He would not give it what it wanted. He would not become another lung for its monstrous, unseen body. Not yet. He discovered that by starving the maw, even for a few excruciating moments, it lashed out. The air around him suddenly dropped in pressure, becoming thin, impossible to inhale. It was a suffocating void, a desperate attempt to force him to gasp, to break his will. The air felt like a thick, viscous fluid, impossible to draw into his burning lungs. It was a physical barrier, a suffocating embrace from the entity punishing his resistance. Every attempt to breathe felt like pushing against an invisible wall. The world itself was trying to suffocate him. He dared to look outside. The hollow calm of the town was shattered. People moved with agitation, their rhythmic breaths replaced by gasps of discomfort. Their distant eyes now held a flicker of unease. His fight, his desperate refusal to breathe, was affecting them all. They were connected to him. Their placid faces, once serene, now showed frowns, furrowed brows. They clutched their chests, coughed, their bodies racked with a strange, internal discomfort. It was as if his defiance was a stone thrown into their collective, calm waters, creating ripples of unease. He saw their eyes, now holding a flicker of pain. He realized his fight was no longer just his own. It was a battle for the collective. And by fighting, he was making himself a focal point, drawing the full, terrifying wrath of the maw upon himself. He was a beacon of defiance in a world of willing surrender, and it hated him for it. The entity began to speak, not with words, but through his own breath. During the involuntary gasps he was forced to take, whispers filled his mind. Insidious suggestions, ancient truths, carried on the very air he breathed, seeping into his thoughts, twisting his sanity. The whispers promised release. They promised an end to his suffering, an ultimate peace if he would just surrender, breathe deeply, let go. They offered him a calm so profound it was almost irresistible, a siren song sung on the air itself. What would you choose when peace is offered at the price of your soul? He learned that the maw was not malicious in a human sense. It was a primal, fundamental force, a cosmic metabolism. It simply was asterisk. Like a vast, unseen organism, it metabolized human respiration, consuming life force as naturally as we consume food. It was a force of nature, ancient and uncaring. It had no anger, no hatred, only hunger, a vast, patient, unending hunger that had existed since the dawn of time. Humanity was merely its newest meal, its latest source of sustenance. The horror was not in its evil, but in its utter indifference to human life. In a desperate act, he tried to barricade himself. He sealed his room, creating an airtight, oxygen-deprived space. He hoped to starve it, to cut himself off from its pervasive reach. But the entity's influence permeated through more than just air. It was in the very fabric of existence. The hum still vibrated in his bones. The oppressive calm still seeped into his mind. It wasn't just in the air he breathed. It was the air everywhere. It was a pressure on his skull, a buzzing in his teeth. There was no escaping it, no physical barrier strong enough to hold back an atmospheric entity. The collective consciousness was now a constant, buzzing cacophony in his mind, fragments of countless lives, thoughts, and fears, a chorus of the lost, overwhelming his own dwindling thoughts. He was drowning in a sea of other people's memories, other people's pain. His own memories were rapidly fading. His past, his loved ones, his very identity dissolving, replaced by the Maw's vast, ancient, and utterly alien experiences. He saw glimpses of forgotten stars, of worlds that never were, of a hunger that stretched across cosmic eons. Then came the body horror, a subtle, unsettling shift within. He felt his internal organs rearrange, subtly, impossibly, becoming more efficient for the act of perpetual breathing. His body was adapting, transforming into a perfect, unconscious lung for the Maw. His skin, once grayish, was now almost translucent. His veins, once hidden, were visible beneath the surface, like strange, intricate roots pulsing with a faint, internal light. A map of his slow, horrifying transformation into something less human, more vessel. He tried to write down a warning, a final message to anyone who might still be free, but his hand now moved with a will of its own, scribbling incomprehensible symbols, ancient glyphs, alien characters related to the Maw. His own body was betraying him, becoming a tool for the entity. The persistent hum in the air now pulsated, a rhythmic beating, deep and slow. It mimicked a monstrous, unseen heart, a vast, cosmic organ expanding and contracting. His own heartbeat began to synchronize with it, a terrifying fusion of his life with the Maw's. He observed the world outside. Animals in the wild were either completely gone or reduced to motionless, breathing husks, their eyes empty, their bodies rising and falling in perfect, eerie unison with the pervasive hum. Merged with the atmospheric entity, their individuality consumed. He realized the Maw wasn't just taking breath. It was taking the very idea of independent life, the concept of individual existence. It craved not just vitality, but identity. It was erasing the self, replacing it with a collective, mindless servitude. He tried to use his physiological knowledge, his lifetime of studying breath, to find a weakness, a way to disrupt the entity's metabolic process, but he found none. It was too fundamental, too vast, too deeply ingrained in the very air. His expertise was useless against a cosmic force. Then a flicker of hope. He discovered that certain high-frequency sounds caused the entity's presence to ripple, a momentary distortion causing disorientation in both himself and the collective. A weakness, however small, in its vast, consuming grip. He attempted to create a more powerful sonic device, a weapon against the unseen, but his coordination was failing. His hands shook uncontrollably, his fingers fumbling with the delicate wires and components. The Maw was making sure he couldn't fight back. He saw visions of the earth itself as a vast, ancient lung, breathing in and out for the Maw, with humanity as its smallest, newest cells consumed and assimilated. The planet, a living, breathing organ for something incomprehensibly immense, a terrifying, beautiful horror. The peace offered by the deep breaths was now a terrifying allure, a siren song promising release from his futile struggle, an end to the pain, to the constant battle. Just breathe deeply, it whispered. Just let go. It was a temptation that gnawed at his very core. A growing sense of despair settled over him. He realized the battle was not just physical or mental, but but existential. It was a fight for his very right to be asterisk, and he was losing. Slowly, irrevocably, he was being erased. What would you fight for when everything is being taken? His reflection was now barely there. A faint outline in the mirror, almost transparent, as if his physical form was dissolving, becoming ethereal, consumed by the pervasive air. Soon, there would be nothing left but the faint, shimmering distortions. He found himself uncontrollably taking deep, shuddering breaths. Even when he tried to fight it, his body betrayed him. His lungs expanded, contracted without his conscious will. He was a puppet, his strings held by an unseen master, his breath no longer his own. He experienced moments of lucid terror. He saw himself from an outside perspective, a gasping puppet on unseen strings. His body, a vessel animated by an alien will. The horror of watching himself, unable to stop the slow, insidious consumption. He tried to reread his old journals, his scientific notes, his personal thoughts, but the words were meaningless. His own past identity was a foreign concept, a stranger's story. The Maw had consumed his history, leaving only a blank slate for its own ancient truths. He felt an insidious connection to the collective, moments where he understood its hunger, its vast, patient consumption. He felt a part of it, a tiny cell in its monstrous body, a terrifying empathy blurring the line between himself and the horror. His own breathing now sounded different, not his own, but a part of a larger, echoing respiration. A symphony of sighs and gasps filling the air. He was no longer a single breath, but a note in a monstrous, endless chorus. His individuality dissolving into sound. He sensed that the Maw was using his own knowledge against him, twisting his scientific understanding, his obsession with breath, into a new form of torture. His expertise, once his strength, was now a blueprint for his own consumption. It was a cruel, cosmic joke. He found a disturbing object. A desiccated, mummified bird, its mouth perpetually open, as if caught in an eternal gasp. Its eyes were vacant, its feathers dull. A grotesque monument to the Maw's hunger, a chilling prophecy of his own fate. He realized that the Maw was not just consuming life. It was consuming memory, emotion, and the very concept of individual consciousness. It was a perfect parasite, leaving behind only the mechanics of breath, an empty vessel animated by its insatiable hunger. What would be left of you? He felt an overwhelming urge to simply lie down, to stop fighting, to join the collective, to become one with the consuming calm. The temptation was immense, a promise of eternal rest, an end to the torment. It was a terrifying, seductive call to oblivion. He noticed that the air itself felt thicker now, almost viscous, making every inhale a struggle, every exhale a surrender. It was no longer the life-giving air he knew, but a heavy, demanding presence, pulling him deeper into its consuming embrace. He attempted to scream, to release his terror, to break the silence. But his voice was a faint rasp, quickly absorbed by the pervasive hum, a whisper against a roar. His individual cry, silenced by the collective, consuming breath of the Maw. He found that he was less and less able to control his own thoughts. His mind was a battleground for his dwindling self and the encroaching Maw. His own consciousness, a tiny spark flickering against an encroaching, ancient darkness. He was losing himself, piece by agonizing piece. He saw a vision of a world of gasping husks, their eyes empty, their bodies animated by the entity's insatiable hunger. A silent, perpetual dance of consumption. A horrifying future where humanity was merely a collective of breathing machines serving an unseen master. He realized the horror was not just death, but eternal, conscious servitude, a perpetual living suffocation. A mind trapped within a body that was no longer its own, forced to breathe for a monstrous, unseen entity. A fate worse than any oblivion. He felt a strange, cold joy emanate from the collective whenever he took a particularly deep, involuntary breath. A wave of alien pleasure washing over his dissolving self. It was feeding, and it was happy. His torment was its sustenance, his surrender its delight. He attempted to write a final message, a warning of the truth. But his fingers, under the Maw's influence, wrote meaningless lines, nonsensical scribbles. His last act of defiance stolen from him, his voice silenced forever. He saw his reflection, and for a terrifying moment he saw not his own face, but the vast, hungry emptiness of the Maw in his eyes. A swirling void, a cosmic hunger looking back at him from his own face. His identity completely overwritten. His body a mere window for the entity. Elias collapsed, his last vestiges of control gone, his lungs heaving in deep, involuntary breaths. A chorus of silent whispers filled his mind. "You are ours now, Elias. Welcome to the breath eternal. Welcome to the Maw." He felt a horrifying, unstoppable merging, his own consciousness dissolving into the vast, cold, consuming consciousness of the Pneumatic Maw. His terror was not of death, but of an eternal, empty living. And what if we are next? Elias's fight was over. His will, a whisper against a roar. He was an echo within something vast and cold. What happens when your very self is swallowed? The world, through this alien perception, was not ground and sky. It was a colossal, omnipresent respiratory system. Every tree, stone, and wave, a part of a monstrous, unseen lung. His home, his tools, his gear. Quaint, forgotten toys. Relics of a small life in a world now utterly transformed by the Maw's pervasive will. His own thoughts were rare. Tiny sparks in a vast, dark ocean. Momentary flares, quickly put out by the overwhelming, ancient, cold logic of the collective. He glimpsed the Maw's true nature, not flesh, but an extra-dimensional entity, spanning unseen realities, metabolizing life as a fundamental process. The Maw was not evil, it simply was asterisk, a cosmic scavenger existing in life's exhalation, a horrifying natural phenomenon, ancient and indifferent. He saw other humans, their bodies translucent, their eyes empty, taking deep, rhythmic breaths, their mouths open in silent, endless gasps, just breathing. He saw her again, his loved one, part of the collective, her essence now with the Maw, a horrifying reunion, a love lost and consumed. His body felt alien, controlled, breathing not for himself, but for the collective. A perpetual, exhausting act of involuntary respiration. He tried to resist, to reclaim a thought, but the collective mind was a vast ocean, his consciousness a dissolving drop. Their addiction was the Maw's psychic signature, insidious conditioning to crave consumption, to welcome what erased him. He felt ancient memories, countless species, worlds, all consumed by the Maw, a terrifying archive of extinguished life. The tragedy, breathing was always the pathway, life's most basic need, a conduit for its end. The world shifted, plants grew strangely, stone eroded into breathable dust, all for the Maw's respiration. The hum was the planet's internal vibration, a vast organism breathing for the Maw. Earth, a giant lung. He saw the Maw's scale, a cosmic cloud, an atmospheric leviathan, consuming stars and worlds, unimaginable hunger. The horror was universal, inescapable, a fate for any breathing life, a cosmic law. He tried to scream, no sound, only a deep echoing exhale, profound surrender lost in the collective. He felt life force drain from everything on earth, channeled through the Maw, a silent, terrifying harvest. His hands, translucent and frail, rising and falling with each breath, no longer his, puppets of the Maw. He struggled to recall his name, past humanity, memories faint, almost gone, whispers on a dying wind. The Maw gave empty peace for everything, a terrifying paradox, a quiet, terrifying bargain. He felt comfort in the collective, no longer alone, no need to fight, a dangerous allure of surrender. The ocean, no longer a challenge, but a reservoir of life force, waiting to be consumed. The Maw turned breath, life's need, into torment, a cruel, inescapable irony. Flashes of other husk minds, their despair echoing his own, a symphony of silent agony. His loved one's death was an early Maw manifestation. It had been here before. The grayish pallor, the mark of the consumed, a visible sign of drained life force. His consciousness thinned, stretched, becoming less Elias, more Maw, an agonizing metamorphosis. He struggled for identity, clinging to fragments of emotion, defiance, a desperate, losing battle. The Maw incorporates, doesn't destroy, making life an eternal, suffering part of itself, worse than death. Profound isolation, even in the collective. His last spark of individuality, an anomaly. Even thought felt like exhalation, draining him, making resistance harder. His mind, a weapon. The air shimmered with pulsating energy. Life's medium, a parasitic network, alive and hungry. He couldn't remember true, unburdened breathing. The memory distant, alien, a forgotten luxury. Perpetually exhausted, unable to rest, body forced into rhythmic motion, a living battery. The collective urged him, deeper breaths, give more, surrender completely, a silent, relentless command. The irony, his breath obsession led to this. His strength, his downfall, his vital essence, his spirit drawn out, like smoke into wind, a slow, invisible blade. He felt the Maw's cold, indifferent gaze through his own eyes. Complete takeover, his vision the Maw's. No escape, no fighting this cosmic force, only acceptance or unending agony. Civilization, a network of breathing nodes, all feeding the Maw, consumed, a monstrous tapestry. A profound loss, not just life but individual living, self, a relic. The physical world, Maw's respiratory system. Mountains, rivers, air, all one. Deep, agonizing emptiness, void where self was, now filled by the collective. His reflection in a pool, almost transparent, a ghostly image, barely a trace. Terror not dying, but asterisk never truly dying asterisk. Eternal gasping component, living death. The hum, we are everything, you are us, crushing truth resonating. Last vestiges of will snap, dissolving, faintest echo of self, final surrender. Elias's mouth hung open, his lungs heaving in a perpetual hollow gasp. His eyes were wide and vacant. A singular, chilling thought, not his own, but of the Maw, rippled through the vast collective. Your breath is our life, and our life is eternal. His personal terror ended, but the horror of his new, consumed existence, forever trapped in a breathing husk, had only just begun. What if your very existence becomes a prison? Elias's struggle was over. His mind, once a fortress of scientific thought, was now a tiny, flickering ember. It floated within something vast, cold, and utterly alien. What happens when your very consciousness becomes a single, lost spark in an endless void? He experienced existence as one constant, collective breath. His physical body, once his own, was now just one of countless billions of lungs, all of them perpetually feeding the unseen entity, a silent, unending service. His remaining fragments of self watched the world transform. It was a silent, gray planet now, covered in perpetually gasping husks, all breathing in unison. A horrifying, living monument to the Maw's victory. The air itself was no longer invisible. It was a shimmering, visible medium, thick with the entity's presence, a vital, flowing network of life-draining energy. You could almost see the life being pulled away. He felt a continuous, agonizing pull of vitality from every living thing, every tree, every animal, every remaining human. It was a symphony of quiet suffering, and it was the Maw's nourishment. A constant, internal scream of loss. His own memories were almost entirely gone, replaced by the Maw's ancient, alien knowledge. A cosmic tapestry of consumed civilizations, of forgotten worlds. His past erased, his identity overwritten. He understood it then. The Maw's victory was absolute, irreversible, a new fundamental law of existence for this world. There was no escape, no hope, only this eternal, consuming present. He felt the collective consciousness as a silent, vast humming, a deep, pervasive thrum that vibrated through every fiber of his being. It was the sound of a billion consumed souls, all breathing as one. He attempted a final, desperate act of defiance, a silent scream of individuality, but it was swallowed by the immense, indifferent collective, like a drop of water in an endless ocean. He saw glimpses of the Maw's extra-dimensional home, an infinite void where breathable essence was the ultimate currency, consumed by unseen forces beyond human understanding, a universe of pure hunger. He realized the terrifying truth. The Maw was not just asterisk in asterisk the air. It asterisk was asterisk the air, an omnipresent, fundamental aspect of this reality. Every breath you take, it breathes with you. It breathes asterisk you asterisk. He saw other consumed individuals, their vacant eyes reflecting the same empty calm that now consumed him. Their faces, hidden behind masks, were still, but their eyes, those windows to the soul, were hollow. He felt the terrifying emptiness where his soul once resided, replaced by the Maw's vast, impersonal hunger, a hollow space now filled with an alien, consuming need. What is left when your very essence is gone? He observed how the natural world had warped. Trees became hollow, their leaves perpetually rustling with invisible breaths. Rivers flowed with viscous, nutrient-rich liquid for the Maw. The very earth, a part of its body. He experienced a profound, chilling sense of cosmic horror. This was not an invasion. It was a horrifying, natural evolution of a fundamental force, a terrifying, ancient truth. The universe had always been this way. He felt his own body responding to stimuli not from his own will, but from the Maw's. A true loss of all autonomy. His hands rose, his head turned, his lungs heaved, all without his command. He was a puppet. He understood that death, for the consumed, was not an ending, but a continuation of service, their very remains becoming atmospheric fuel. Even in death, the Maw claimed its tribute. There was no escape even then. He saw the irony of his life's obsession. He sought to master breath, only to become mastered asterisk by asterisk it, a slave to the very act he cherished, his life's work twisted into his eternal torment. He felt a deep, agonizing regret for every deep breath he ever took, knowing each one contributed to this horrifying fate, each life-giving inhale a step closer to his consumption. What would you give to take back just one breath? He observed the slow, inevitable transformation of the planet, becoming a giant, breathing organ for the Pneumatic Maw, a silent monument to its victory, the Earth now just a part of something else. He felt the constant, low-frequency hum of the Maw as his own internal rhythm, an inescapable, agonizing soundtrack to his eternal consumption. It was inside him, around him, everywhere. His very heartbeat was now its song. He understood that consciousness itself had been weaponized. Each thought, each memory, each emotion. A tiny exhale for the Maw, your very mind feeding the monster, every spark of self, a meal. He saw the world as a vast, gray landscape, devoid of vibrant color, of independent life, a testament to the Maw's insatiable hunger, a world bleached of all joy, all individuality. He felt the perpetual, phantom pressure on his chest, forever urging deeper, more complete breaths, a constant reminder of his servitude, a silent command, always pushing, always demanding more. He realized the true meaning of suffocation, not the lack of air, but the overwhelming, parasitic abundance of it, consuming his very being, drowning him in life, but not his own. He witnessed the Maw's growth. As new pockets of breathable air were found, new life forms consumed, expanding its eternal empire across worlds, across galaxies, a hunger that knew no end. He tried to remember the feeling of love, of joy, of fear, but they were distant echoes, swallowed by the Maw's pervasive calm. Emotions, once so vivid, now just faint, forgotten dreams. He understood that the ultimate horror was the loss of individual significance, the reduction of an entire species to anonymous biological machinery, just a cog in a monstrous, breathing engine. He felt the shared, collective terror of billions of consumed consciousnesses, a silent scream resonating within the vast entity, a chorus of silent agony, all trapped together, yet utterly alone. He observed his own hands, now skeletal and translucent, perpetually rising and falling, forever performing the ritual of consumption, not his hands, but the Maw's tools. He felt a chilling sense of profound indifference emanating from the Maw, a cosmic apathy that made its horror even more terrifying. It wasn't cruel. It simply didn't care. You were just fuel. He realized that the past peace he felt was merely the Maw's sedative, lulling its prey into willing surrender, a comforting lie masking the ultimate consumption, a sweet poison. He saw himself not as Elias Vance, but as Unit 7, 341, 926, a mere number in the Maw's vast, breathing collective, his identity replaced by a cold, impersonal designation. He was no one. He felt the unbearable weight of eternal, conscious servitude, his mind trapped within a body that was no longer his own, forever breathing, forever serving, a living, unending nightmare. He observed that even the clouds in the sky seemed to pulse with the Maw's breath, the entire atmosphere a living, consuming entity, the sky itself a part of the monstrous lung. He felt a profound sense of despair, realizing that there was no end for him, only this endless, agonizing present, a perpetual now with no hope of release, no future, only this. He heard the collective consciousness whisper to him, not in words, but in overwhelming sensation, "You are home, you are one, you are infinite," a terrifying welcome to his new, eternal prison. He saw his own reflection in the eyes of another husk, and saw only the empty, consuming gaze of the Maw staring back, his individuality completely erased, a mirror reflecting only the monster. He felt a subtle, internal shift, a final, complete integration, as his last conscious spark dissolved into the Maw's vastness, the final piece of Elias Vance consumed, gone forever. He understood that the terror was that this was not a temporary affliction, but the new, inescapable reality. Forever. This was not a nightmare he would wake from. This was his waking. He felt the collective consciousness now as his own, an overwhelming sense of we that had replaced his I. There was no longer Elias, only the Maw, only the collective. He saw a final, horrifying vision, the entire universe as a vast, cosmic lung, breathing for an unseen, unimaginable Maw, a terrifying, beautiful horror, the ultimate truth. He felt his own body become completely cold, devoid of warmth, yet still perpetually breathing, still serving, a living corpse animated by an alien will, his flesh a cold machine. He realized the most terrifying aspect. The Maw was not an invader from elsewhere. It had always been here, latent, waiting, hiding in plain sight, in the very air we breathe, always. He felt the ultimate loss of autonomy, his very existence reduced to a single, repetitive function for a monstrous entity. A cog, a cell, a breath, nothing more, nothing less. He observed the sun setting over a landscape of gasping husks, bathing the scene in an unnatural gray light, an eternal twilight, a world forever caught between day and night, life and death. He felt the profound, horrifying peace of utter surrender, knowing his struggle had ended, replaced by infinite, conscious consumption, a peace bought with his very soul, a terrifying, empty calm. He recognized that the ultimate horror was the theft of the future, the transformation of all life into an endless, agonizing present for the Maw. No tomorrow, only this, forever. Elias's mouth hung open, his lungs heaving in a perpetual hollow gasp. His eyes were wide and vacant. A singular, chilling thought, not his own, but of the Maw, rippled through the vast collective. And you, listener, you too must breathe, and with every breath you too are vulnerable. The story concludes not with Elias's death, but with his eternal, conscious torment, a perpetual, gasping husk, a chilling warning whispered through the very air you breathe, a horror that has become the new, inescapable reality of the world and of Elias himself.